The escalation of civil war in 1988 between the Somali National Movement, or SNM, and the military regime led to a massive refugee crisis in the Horn. The brutality and indiscriminate nature of the government response caused roughly 500,000 people to flee to Ethiopia. By the time it had ended, the war had cost the lives of tens of thousands of people and the incalculable destruction of property and livelihoods. The institution of the family was among the true casualties of the war. This film is based on research conducted by the Academy for Peace and Development in collaboration with WSP International, which deals with the impact of civil war and state collapse on the family, values, and culture in Somaliland. The film highlights the problems associated with the consumption of qat, which has become epidemic in the post-war period, as well as the efforts of the people of Somaliland to rebuild normal lives and a healthy society in the aftermath of war. The violence and turmoil of conflict tore many families apart, leaving behind a multitude of widows, orphans, and broken homes.
In the war, the family house and belongings were destroyed, and with the father unemployed, the difficult economic situation forced the mother to seek work outside her home and abandon the upbringing of her children. This made parents vulnerable, and they lost the trust and respect of their children. What happened is a total breakdown, a degeneration of the family unit and society at large, and this process is still in progress up to the present.
The traditional family unit never fully recovered. Severe economic distress compelled many women to take on the role of family breadwinner because many men were either involved in the war or unemployed.
The ordeal is more pronounced in families who lost fathers in the war. In such cases, mothers had no choice but to go out to earn livelihood for their children. This condition also applies to many families whose fathers are alive but unemployed. Again, it's the mother who shoulders the responsibility of feeding the children, and this has a strained husband-wife relationship. When the husband tries to give orders, his wife rebuffs him, reminding him that he is no longer in control since he is not taking his responsibilities in supporting the family. Working mothers are away from home all day. Thus, children take the liberty to do whatever they wish, and fathers in despair to secure the daily mission of God. Therefore, nobody is in charge in the family.
Traditionally, men provided for the family economically, and the mother stayed at home. However, lack of employment and the death or desertion of husbands a large number of female-headed households in Somaliland. A 1998 survey by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, on the status of families in Somaliland found that 40% of all households surveyed were female-headed.
All the demands of the family. This situation had forced them to take the roles of both mother and father in the household. The woman has to earn the daily bread for her family. At the same time, she has to attend to the upbringing of the children and chores of the house. If she tries to concentrate on one task, she is surely neglecting the others. These are the tasks that a woman cannot do by herself alone.
Most mothers have no choice but to manage these tasks alone, although some rich families employ a housekeeper or have help from a relative. Women traders work in the marketplace from dawn to dusk. Some, particularly qat sellers, do not usually return home before 10 p.m. In their absence, young daughters often have to take up their mother's other responsibilities, so that they in turn are unable to attend school. Mothers without household help face the problem of going back and forth between their places of business and their homes.
Despite the difficulties, the father needs to try harder. If he is not earning the family employment among men, then he should show and caring for the children. The father needs role in this impoverished and traumatized Somali society, and also within the family unit, of which he is only one part.
Many women believe that working in the market all day has been detrimental to their role in the home. Early child rearing and care are traditionally the responsibility of mothers, and many women feel guilty about not having enough time to attend their children. There are widely divergent views in Somaliland on the issue of women working outside their homes. While some insist that women are abandoning their traditional responsibilities, many women argue that they have no choice but to go out and work, since most men are unable to meet their families' needs. Other women are of the opinion that they are economically better off than before and have gained a new self-confidence, becoming decision makers in their homes. They have little or no interest in returning to their traditional family roles. Perhaps the most visible sign of weakening in the traditional family structure is the changing pattern of marriage and divorce in post-war Somaliland. Financial stress related to unemployment and widespread poverty is considered to be one major factor in the breakup of marriages. Another problem is that in the absence of adequate guidance, many contemporary couples enter the marriage contract without full knowledge of their traditional obligations and responsibilities to one another or to their respective extended families.
In our traditional society, marriage took place between two families. Actually, marriages were organized at the clan level. The bride was considered as an ambassador who would represent her clan's interest vis-à-vis the clan of the bridegroom. Women therefore enjoyed tremendous respect as they played a very important role in the pastoral society. For example, in times of war, such women could save the lives of prisoners. A woman could arrange for their release unharmed.
Because of the clan-based nature of the marriage contract, elders would traditionally assume the role of mediators in any serious marital dispute. But in more recent times, such traditional mechanisms have become corrupted. Elders may deliberately extend the period of mediation and counseling, since today such services are provided for a price. In traditional Somali society, customs also existed to ensure that the divorced mother and her children were cared for. Today, a father may simply abandon his family when he feels unable to support them, possibly establishing another family elsewhere. Women occasionally do likewise, taking a new husband in a different town without divorcing the first one. There is little doubt that such practices are symptomatic of more general patterns of parental delinquency, promiscuity, and a long-term loosening of the family unit.
The wife has taken over the responsibility of the family. She no longer tolerates the least criticism from her unemployed husband. Whenever there is an argument, she is very quick to point out that he is no longer useful.
One important clue to the proliferation of extramarital relationships and the erosion of stable marriages is the growing incidence of sexually transmitted diseases and HIV/AIDS, which have been on the increase since 1991. Records from local blood banks, testing of suspected AIDS cases, and information from the few available studies suggest that the prevalence of HIV in Somaliland's general population is around 1% in the year 2002. However, the potential spread of HIV should not be underestimated. The rate of sexually transmitted disease infection reported by women's antenatal clinics is as high as 30%, suggesting that HIV may be more widespread than current figures indicate. And though the prevalence of HIV appears to be relatively low, it can spread with alarming speed unless adequate preventive measures are taken. The war and its aftermath have left a lasting impression on Somaliland's youth. Many of today's young people have never known a normal home life. Elder children have been raised either in a war situation or as refugees, and have been exposed to violence or other sources of trauma. For some, violence has been carried over into home life, where parents may no longer be able to manage their domestic problems without resort to physical and psychological abuse. Such an environment can inhibit a child's development as a healthy, productive member of society.
In the past, children would go either to Quranic or formal schools. Nowadays, one sees in towns and neighborhoods hundreds of kids, none of whom attend formal or informal schools. The majority of these are those who were born since 1988. Such phenomena and the generally poor living conditions are the after effects of the war. Girls are the same. If the mother argues with her daughter, she is likely to flee from her home and may go to other towns. Nobody can talk to her. If you try to separate couples who are quarreling in the street, they might accuse you of favoring one of them or the other, simply because you may be a distant relative of one of them. All this misconduct and mistrust is due to the trauma that the war and the destruction left behind.
When marriages break down, jobs fail to materialize, or relatives are unable to provide familial support, many such children end up on the streets. Together, such factors are contributing to an increase in the number of street children in most major cities. Qat, a mild stimulant, grows widely in the highlands of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Yemen. The leaves are chewed green and fresh within 24 to 48 hours of picking. Since the onset of the Civil War in the early 1980s, the volume of the Qat trade has increased nearly fourfold, from about 9,000 kilograms per day to 32,000 kilograms per day in 2001. With such a remarkable level of growth, the Qat trade has become one of the major employment sectors in the country. Truck drivers, sales agents, retailers and porters all make a living from the trade. Qat is also a major source of revenue for local and central government in Somaliland, earning about $3 million for the government each year. This figure represents over 10% of the government's annual revenue, but it's very little when compared to Somaliland's expenditure on imported Qat, which approaches $200 million a year. Once a mainly urban habit, Qat use has today taken hold within the rural population as well. Since the 1980s, the number of women chewing has also been on the increase, transgressing a long-standing cultural taboo. While Qat chewing among women remains limited to a small minority in urban areas, it has nevertheless gained considerable ground since the pre-war period.
Qat has already driven the Somali men mad. Now we see more and more women giving in to the habit of chewing Qat. In the old days, only bad girls used to chew Qat. But today there are many decent girls staying in their parents' houses and respected married women turning to chewing Qat. In the city of Hargeisa today, there are many women-only mefreshes, and they are growing at a rapid pace.
Youths have also begun to take up the Qat habit on a large scale. There has been a sharp increase in daily Qat use by boys under the age of 15 years.
In our school, for example, there are children whose fathers died during the Civil War and whose mothers sell Qat. These kids also chew and will quarrel with their mother if she fails to provide them with their daily Qat. When school children chew Qat, they are unable to attend to their homework. They stay awake the whole night and are unable to come to school on time. Ultimately, this leads to many school boys and girls becoming dropouts at an early age.
The increasing use of Qat has given rise to a boom in tea shops as a place for chewing. Their regulars view these places as suitable venues for chewing because the user is shielded from the inevitable family arguments that arise from excessive chewing at home. These tea shops, known as godi, are also safe havens for teenage boys who want to indulge in the habit without the knowledge of their parents. Many godi are run by young women and have become places where young people of both sexes intermingle freely until late at night. Members of the older generation thus perceive the godi as dens of immorality that have contributed to the spread of illicit sex among the youth.
The qad has overwhelmed us. It has turned our society upside down, and we need an urgent mercy mission to save us. It's necessary that we put restrictions on qad. Perhaps the first thing to begin with is to prohibit teenage girls from selling qad.
The struggle to satisfy cravings for qat leads many users to place themselves on the wrong side of the law. In Gebile district, for example, of 99 civil cases to go before court in the calendar year 1999, 67 were related to qat. The figures from a small town like Gebile offer a bleak insight into the broader trends linking qat use and criminality. Since 1991, Somaliland has made considerable progress in re-establishing public and private institutions from scratch. A plethora of local and national level actors have emerged to fill the gap left by the collapse of the state. In everything from legislation to service provision, necessity has produced a blend of imitation of pre-war structures and improvisation. Not surprisingly, initiatives to support the family often involve a combination of governmental, private, and community elements.
People return from the refugee camps destitute, carrying with them a lot of suffering and bad memories. These people return to a shattered country, cities and towns in ruins, the economy and basic infrastructure totally destroyed, and the basic needs like health, education, and employment totally lacking. The reconstruction that have taken place is a drop in the ocean compared to the huge work that lies ahead. The available services are very few, and the majority of the people have no access to them.
Although the Islamic legal system includes a comprehensive body of law pertaining to the family, this is often not applied. Most families prefer to solve their problems in the first instance by referring to customary law, or her. Only if this fails do they resort to the courts and the formal legal system. The existence of parallel laws, such as the Penal Code, Sharia, and customary law, creates considerable confusion and offers loopholes that can complicate the course of justice. For instance, while it is the prerogative of the man to pronounce divorce, the Sharia also allows a woman to demand a divorce for reasons such as lack of maintenance, absenteeism, or threats to her life. Delinquent husbands, however, typically demand that their wives forego their legal rights in exchange for a divorce. Since few women in Somaliland are aware of their rights under Sharia law or are prepared to demand them, it is not uncommon for a woman to give up her rights to the custody of her children and to exempt her husband from alimony in order to obtain a divorce. And were a woman to demand such rights, more often than not, she will find her clan elders and the courts unsympathetic to her case.
The legislator should enact laws that deal with the family, that define the obligations of parents towards their children, laws that clearly articulate the duties of parents towards their children in feeding, caring for them, and raising them. But such laws are now non-existent. It is necessary to develop all the laws that deal with the various aspects of the family. Existing laws are based on the Islamic Sharia, but the Sharia itself is composed of general principles. It is necessary to elaborate these principles and extract those portions that are consistent and go smoothly with the Somali cultural values.
Women are not alone in being neglected by the legal system. There are no provisions within the law for trying crimes committed by children. Most young offenders are simply treated as dangers to society. Many are locked away by the police for alleged crimes of disobedience to their parents without even passing through the courts. For such juvenile delinquents, no remedial sentences or facilities are available, and they must serve time in prison together with adult criminals. Somaliland's legal system has far to go before it will be capable of responding to the increasingly complex challenge of meting out criminal and social justice, while respecting the human rights prescribed by religious and international law. Since the Civil War, traditional support mechanisms for the family have been overstretched and are anyway insufficient to meet new social needs. But the growth of public services to meet these needs has been slow and uneven, leaving many individuals and families with nowhere to turn when they need help.
I have two sons. One of them is physically handicapped, as he lost his limbs in the war and has been lying at home all these years like a 1-year-old baby. The other one is mentally sick, chained in my house for 5 years now. I have also lost my husband in the war, and now I am the only one taking care of them. There are no hospitals that I can take them to, no government, no agencies to tend to. For me and other families in similar situation, there is nobody who wants to understand or report on our plight to the outside world.
The problems facing the contemporary Somaliland family are many and complex. Addressing these problems will require a recognition among key governmental and non-governmental actors that the crisis of the Somaliland family can no longer be considered an exclusively private problem and requires instead greater public intervention and support.